Greetings, hi, it's me, Dr. Paul Gerhardt, and thank you very much for taking time to watch this video. Conversation at hand is, what do leaders do versus managers do to create change? Well, that means you have to really understand what the difference is between a leader and a manager. John Cotter from Harvard University clearly identifies managers as being people who are planning, budgeting, organizing, staffing, controlling, and problem solving. So if those are part of a person's primary job duties, then that person would be qualified as a manager. On the other hand, leaders, they're a little bit different. Leaders establish direction, they develop a vision toward an ideal vision, they align people, they're motivating and inspiring people to give their very best at accomplishing organizational objectives and goals. So I like, one of my favorite authors is Dr. Stephen Covey. He was said to have been the most influential person of the 20th century. His book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, has been read by millions of people around the world, and it truly is one of the best-selling books of all time. And Covey says that managers focus on things, leaders focus on people. And I think it's a really simple but brilliant way of thinking about the differences between managers and leaders. You may have the title of being a manager, but if people are reporting to you, you really need to have a focus on helping people be the best that they can be. And so therefore you need to be a leader. Working in academia, I've worked for bosses who have had a management focus, and then they would say things like, Paul, we may not be able to offer this particular class because you have to have so many students in that class and we only have X amount. You're two students short of having the minimum. And so I would always come back around and say, oh, well, this is a class that's only offered once a year and it's a part of a degree, so do we just tell that student that, sorry, you don't get to have the expertise in this particular area because an administrator has decided that we were 2 students short? I mean, where do you draw the line in making a management decision that affects people? What I love about Stephen Covey is he says that with people, you need to focus on effectiveness. With things, you need to focus on efficiency. If you are trying to be efficient with people, you're going to have a hard time getting things done ultimately. And Covey also says, with people, fast is slow and slow is fast. And it makes such good sense. If you're trying to rush and saying, listen, hey, we're making a budget decision here. We used to train people when we hire them in our onboarding system to do their jobs. But we just want you to learn on the job, so just come to us if you have any questions. And then they let people go and they learn along the way. But what happens when you're being efficient with training for budgetary reasons, very often you have people who are good people that you hire with good intentions, and the leaders, of course, or managers have good intentions. But then you got people who start to do a job and they're muddling their way through doing the job, and then they get frustrated, or the boss comes around and saying, what the heck are you doing? That's not correct. You know, this is costing us lots of money. Stop doing that. Why would you do that? Well, people don't see how their actions may be affecting other people or other systems in the organization. And that's why cutting out training is such a bad management decision, or cutting out programs or classes that may affect other people, that is a bad management decision in many cases. But sometimes you just have to make a decision and roll with it and find alternatives. And that's what good managers do. Most managers understand that their organization is in business to serve stakeholders. Customers need to leave with their expectations being met, and when we fail to meet their expectations, or we're not serving ultimately our customers well, no matter what level of the organization we're in, it can be very costly in the long run. So making management decisions can very much have negative results ultimately if they're not thinking like leaders. Great leaders would involve people in the decision-making process, especially when it affects other people. And most decisions in organizations will affect other people in other ways. So that's a really good foundational lesson, to be really thinking about what makes a leader a great leader, and what makes a good manager a good manager, and how can a manager make effective leadership decisions that continue to keep the organization profitable, moving forward, and having good returns on investments. Sometimes we don't see the costs in making management decisions in the long run, and we end up taking out fury on good people who are doing their best to do what they do, and they get frustrated. Ultimately, the biggest cost in doing business has to do with employees. You bring the best people in, you're spending money on recruiting, hiring, onboarding, and training, and it takes about 2 years or so to get somebody to be as effective at doing what the person that did it before. And then after you spend all that money and all the potential losses that come with making mistakes because you're new, and then losing that employee because they're frustrated and not getting the right kind of support, that is ultimately more expensive. They could be taking coworkers with them. They could be taking customers with them. And they could be taking them to your competition. So, be good to people. If you are managing people, you've got to be a leader. Think about leadership decisions and ultimately the bigger picture. Who will be affected by this? Who could be affected by it? If you're a manager, take the time to really think about effectiveness with systems. Find ways to create win-win situations with people. And remember, with anything, communicating with other people, really listening to what your choices are before making a management decision, because it could be a lot more costly than you realize. Thanks so much for being here. I appreciate your time. What are your thoughts on managing change versus leading change? I'd love to know.